Welcome to the afternoon session of AMA Junior Camp. I'm so excited that you guys are joining us today. We've got an awesome special guest here for you. And you may have seen him before. If you attended the morning session, if you're one of our AMA Junior campers, you would have seen both Kyles there in the morning session. Kyle Thiede and Kyle Boyer do an excellent job folding some paper airplanes. And it was from this book, Foldable Flight. And you know what? I'm really honored to have Kyle Boyer joining us today. He's the owner and the founder of Foldable Flight, which is a YouTube channel, and he goes through and does some amazing things with paper. And it's one of those things that we're quite frankly really excited to bring him on and share with you guys this conversation. Just so you guys know, if you have questions or thoughts as we go through this conversation, of course, please put them into the chat. We love hearing from you guys, and we love bringing you to the forefront to ask questions. And of course, we've got a few of our own. Well, without further ado, I'm going to bring in Kyle Boyer.
Hey, Kyle. Thank you so much for having me today.
You bet, man. We're excited to have you. And, just as we went through, our short list, quite frankly, of who we were hoping to have on AMA Junior Camp in those interviews and to help us lead the sessions, your name kept coming back up with, the idea of doing amazing stuff with paper. And quite frankly, so often people think of, model aviation as something that costs a lot or, takes a skill set that's developed over years. And sometimes that stuff can be true. But ultimately, you can take a piece of scrap paper and have an amazing time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my interest primarily is with just that, just taking a regular sheet of paper, no scissors, no tape, nothing else, and just being able to create something amazing out of that. And that's, you'd be surprised at what you can make. Absolutely.
Well, and speaking of surprised, I mean, when I looked at your YouTube information, you've got over 300,000 people that love folding flight enough to say, yeah, I'll subscribe to your channel. You've done over 800 videos, I think is what I counted. I didn't count them one by one. So you tell me.
It's like, it's a little more than 100.
Oh, yeah. Well, a little more. I'm sure a lot more.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to see, all the different effort that you've put into it and really to see this groundswell of people, getting involved in it. It's one of those things that it's not just the kid at the back of the classroom throwing a paper airplane and getting in trouble. Now, case in point, what we did this morning, it's building a paper aircraft using that STEM line of reasoning and thought process and really initiating a learning environment that's fun and enjoyable. And that's why we get so excited about what you're doing.
Absolutely. And that's really a big part of my passion for paper airplanes is it's a wonderful intersection between two of my major interests, which are art through origami and engineering. And so the challenge of designing a paper airplane that's both beautiful and performs well is so intriguing. And you're absolutely using a lot of aerodynamic principles when you are trying to solve that problem. And it's fun to arrive at a solution and then to be able to share it with so many people because, again, all you need is a sheet of paper.
So I got a question for you starting out. I guess tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into aviation in general, like how you developed this skill set, which is pretty niche, and share it with so many.
Yeah, well, like so many kids, I started folding paper airplanes when I was like 6 or 7. I think my grandmother got me a paper airplane book for Christmas or something like that. And quickly, my interest kind of went beyond the planes that I could find in the books that I'd been given and onto the process of designing paper airplanes. And I thought my earliest designs were absolutely amazing. I mean, I started designing when I was like 7 and I thought they were so good. And I look back on them and I know now that they really weren't great. But in first grade, I won a paper airplane competition at school using a paper airplane that I designed. And I think that was a very formative moment for me because then I believed I was not just good, but great. And, it kind of just took off from there. I continued designing paper airplanes throughout my childhood and on through college. And as my understanding of origami improved, then I could really introduce that interest in art to the discipline of making paper airplanes because I could start to imagine shapes and create unique forms through the paper airplanes, as well as just trying to create something that flies. And because it really hits two of my major interests, it's like nothing else for me. It's such a satisfactory experience to go through the process of designing a plane.
Well, speaking of going through the process of designing a plane, we've actually got a question from Margaret. How do you come up with your designs? And that's the question that was burning inside of me as well. It's, define your process a little bit. Like you mentioned, you're thinking about it. Is that really where they all start?
Sometimes it starts with exactly that. I have a general concept in mind, and now I'm at a point where for many of those concepts, I can kind of have a really good rough idea of what I need to do in the folding process to arrive at that point. Very often, though, it's kind of an exploration. It's something much simpler. In paper airplanes, locking mechanisms are a big thing. That's a way of kind of holding all the layers to the body of the plane, or even holding the plane in its three-dimensional shape so it doesn't flop open when you throw it. So sometimes I'll have an idea for a new locking mechanism that I haven't tried, and I try to figure out the best way to implement that into a design. Or sometimes I really don't know what I'm folding when I sit down to start, and I'm just moving the paper and seeing if as I fold an idea comes to me. And oftentimes it does. And so I couldn't give you any estimation of, like what percentage of the time I sit down to fold a plane, it's a success, but I spend a lot of time folding and a lot of time throwing away bad paper airplanes.
I was going to ask, how much paper do you go through in a day when you're kind of ideating that next design?
A lot of paper. I have thousands and thousands of sheets of paper in my office, more than anyone else might need. But I have fun doing it, and the trial and error is definitely part of the fun. Exploring just the vast array of possibilities and honing in on that right one is definitely a lot of fun.
Awesome. We've got another awesome question that came in from Chai D, I believe. And the question is, my kids would like to design their own paper airplane, I'm assuming. What platform would you recommend that they use? Like, is there a certain design solution that you utilize, or is it best to just grab a piece and start folding?
Interesting. So would like to design their own paper. I do wonder if they mean paper or paper airplanes. I don't know a lot about paper creation, if that is the question. If it's about paper airplanes, then I wonder what platform means. But in terms of paper format and weight, like for instance, the United States standard for printer paper is 8.5 by 11 inches. And that's kind of a fairly wide rectangle, but it's longer than it is wide. Whereas in Europe, A4 is the standard and it's a bit narrower, a bit taller. And then a lot of people fold origami using squares. And all of those work really, really well for paper airplanes, but you'll have to kind of do some different things with the paper to arrive at a solution that flies well. Usually you want to create a fair amount of weight at the front of the plane. And so you need to fold layers at the front. And the longer the rectangle, so especially with A4 paper, you're going to need to put more weight toward the front because you'll have all that paper behind it as well.
Nice. So obviously designing around that basic format is important. And it looks like you usually stick to the 8.5 by 11. I'm sure you've kind of explored other solutions as well. But then with different weights of paper, do you often stick with just the general run-of-the-mill, maybe literally, paper stock, or do you experiment with thinner weights or heavier weights?
So my favorite paper is called Astro Brights. It's a very bright colored paper that's 24 pounds. Most printer paper is about 20 pounds, and that's the American way of measuring the thickness of paper. So it's a little bit thicker than what you would typically print on if you just were loading your paper with what you have on hand. And the nice thing about that is it gives the paper airplane a little bit more mass, which gives it the ability to pierce through the air. The effect of wind resistance on that mass is less pronounced. So typically using heavier paper, your planes can fly farther. Though it does depend on what you're trying to accomplish with your plane. If you're, for instance, trying to design a paper airplane that stays in the air for a long time, thinner paper can be an advantage because it's going to fall more slowly than the heavier paper would.
Okay. Are there any paper airplanes, and this is just me being curious, Are there paper airplanes that have some kind of a folding mechanism or a pressure differential where the wings would fold out further after you get to a certain altitude, like, or a certain speed?
I have absolutely dreamed of trying to create a plane that functions in that way. The challenge is creating an origami mechanism that will allow for that, that also doesn't completely degrade the structural integrity of the wings. A lot of times, adding a lot of creases without really thickening the layers can result in wings that want to kind of bend and flex a lot. And that's a real problem when you're trying to throw a paper airplane consistently. So I haven't arrived at any solution to that. I don't know of anyone who has, but I know that that's been on the mind of other paper airplane designers too.
Yeah, I have to imagine it would be. I mean, when it's done in free flight models or even RC stuff where it's a fast launch up into the air, and then there's usually a rubber actuator or something that,
Mm-hmm.
creates a mechanism that releases. So, doing it the traditional way with this is the paper and these are the folds, I can only begin to imagine how difficult that would be. So keep dreaming about it, though.
Yeah, I will. I will.
That's awesome. We've got Ronnie that jumped into the chat stream. I want to give him a call out real quick. He's doing some paper airplanes with a class tomorrow at the Lewis Academy. So I hope you guys have fun. If you need to get some inspiration, there's some great planes in here too, Ronnie, although I know you've got a few that you go on. So go back to. I had a quick question for you, Kyle. You mentioned earlier that, you'd been designing planes since you were a kid, trying out different things, tinkering, which is really neat. That you found that kind of a passion early on, and that it was cemented when you won that competition. What educators really, made an impact in you, and how? Like, who were some of those?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one would obviously be that first grade teacher, Mrs. Hall. I have to give a big thanks to her. I was blessed with a lot of good educators in my life. Other people that come to mind would be primarily at college. I went to Anderson University. I was actually studying graphic design there, so nothing related to engineering or paper airplanes. Not that there are degrees related to paper airplanes very closely, except for maybe, aerodynamic engineering or something like that. But I just had a bevy of people around me who were always encouraging exploration and creativity. And I should shout out my parents and my grandparents as well, because honestly, they were the primary educators in my life, always inviting curiosity and encouraging me to pursue my dreams too. I have some pretty non-traditional dreams. So to end up here is definitely a reflection of the kind of freedom they gave me in thinking of what's possible.
Yeah. Well, that's my same alma mater, Anderson University. So it's fun to know, we went through that same program there. Well, and I guess the follow-up question is really, when you think about those who've inspired you, and it may be the same people, but, who are your heroes? Who do you aspire to be like, or to emulate, or who inspires you to be better?
Yeah, so I'll take it probably a different direction than you're thinking. But I think of just people who inspire me to be better personally more than professionally. I do have some professional friends who are great paper airplane designers who have directly inspired my creations. But I'm really inspired by my wife, who is just the best person I know, and by my parents and by my in-laws. It's been incredible to get to know my wife's family and to learn from them, because they have an entirely different approach to life even than my parents do. And to learn from both of them is a privilege. I've got just so many wonderful people around me.
Makes a big difference.
It does.
Let's see. So one of the questions I wrote down earlier, and I'd like to hear from you a little bit about this. I know that you were traditionally trained as a graphic designer. I think that's awesome. So I guess it's a two-part question. Number one, how does that design training influence what you do? And how do you use that, and how has it equipped you to be successful in what you do? But also, how did you make the transition to saying, from I'm assuming doing this Foldable Flight page is kind of a hobby and it's a lot of fun and you like to share genuinely with people, to a full-time gig? Like this is what you do for a living, quote unquote.
Yeah. So in a very general sense, I use my creative skills in even designing the folding sequence of the paper airplanes. But I also use when you get down to the specific of graphic design, I use graphic design to design that book. For instance, I was lucky enough, I developed skills in college, and I was pursuing them even before that, to not only create the folding sequence for my paper airplanes, but to create the diagrams, the step-by-step diagrams for folding instructions, to create illustrated folding papers so that the planes look colorful and aggressive, and they exude this personality that goes even beyond what you can achieve with just paper. And I try to combine those in a way that's really unique from the creations that other paper airplane designers are coming up with, just to, put my own stamp on it and have my own approach. As far as transitioning from a professional, I was working professionally as a graphic designer. So as far as transitioning from that job to full-time for Foldable Flight, it's a lot like what you would imagine. I was just working on the channel in my spare time. I had seen that there were other really successful paper airplane channels on YouTube, so I was inspired to start mine. And I was uploading as often as I could while, managing the responsibilities of another job. And eventually it started to earn a little revenue, became a supplemental income. And I was actually able to transition because I agreed to work also for a company called Power Up Toys. They make motors to clip onto your paper airplanes. And so in my first year that I transitioned away from graphic design, I was doing part-time Foldable Flight and part-time working with this toy company that was still within the paper airplane sphere. So it was a really good fit for me. And then that kind of transition year set me up to be able to, in the next year, go full-time with Foldable Flight.
Yeah. And I mean, Foldable Flight does a great job. They have a really, I would call it a svelte solution, like a really good solution to, equipping paper airplanes to get into the air with some power behind them, adding that thrust element. So it's really neat that you work alongside of them.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I absolutely loved working with them. It's a great company.
Mm-hmm. Well, and, man, I don't want to give away too much, but here, if you are attending junior camp, one of the projects coming up is going to be using some capacitors in a similar fashion, but there's a little bit more experimentation. I'll say it that way. So stand by. That I think that's on Friday coming up. So yeah, and that's a really cool little segue too. This isn't the last chance you're going to get to be in front of Kyle Boyer. Like, he's coming back on Friday along with Kyle Thiede. And, so that's going to be when they start pursuing a few of those other projects that came in your flight kits. If you don't have a flight kit, you might be able to order it, or you can at least order it now and then catch up later and be able to do that project later together. So really cool stuff coming up. Question that I don't know how I would answer this question. We're on your shoes. So here it goes. What is your favorite paper airplane and why?
Okay, well, that is a good question. I get that one a lot. And I usually just say one of my own to avoid offending any of my friends in the paper airplane world. So I'll tell you my favorite of mine. I do have favorites of other designers as well. But I folded it already just to have on hand. This one is my favorite because I don't think, as far as I know, that there's any other paper airplane like it in the world, at least not to such dramatic effect. And that is called Zephyr, which this is kind of a rear view. This plane has no center crease, and the wings are held in tension in such a way that the back of the wings undulate in this kind of wave shape. And it's not a jet. It's not, the most visually spectacular plane, but I love its subtle curves and just the really clean nature of its design. And so this one's my favorite. It has a special place in my heart.
Nice. Well, that is really cool. And I don't think I've ever seen a paper airplane that didn't have that, center crease. So it is really neat to see. There is a question that came in, and it relates to something that I'd like to talk about anyway. The question was from Brad Williamson. It says, Kyle, will you be attempting any world record airplane designs, duration, and or distance? And so kind of going along with that, there's the Guinness World Records, which, has been around for a while and does some amazing stuff and has some amazing records that you can crack if you're able. But also Red Bull has done some really neat stuff with their, I believe it's called the Paper Wings.
Mm-hmm.
So have you ever experienced any of those competitions, or do you plan to?
Yeah, well, first off, hello, Brad. I know Brad personally. He's an awesome guy. Check out Nighthawk Gliders if you're a fan of free flight. Thank you for the question. I do hope to someday challenge for the world record, and I'm open both to challenging in distance and in airtime as well. I have been working over several months to try and work toward that goal of breaking the distance world record, which until just like a week ago was 226 feet 10 inches. But there are rumors swirling that was just smashed, actually, and that the new record's over 250 feet, which,
wow,
I'm going to be honest, hurts my chances a little bit. I was feeling like it was within the realm of possibility for me. My personal best throws my best throw is over 220 feet. So I was getting really close. And this news that it was just smashed is a bit of a personal disappointment, though I'm really excited for them. Yeah, exactly. A knife to the heart right as I was feeling like I was getting into the realm of that record.
Well, how cool is it that people are like out there trying new things, advancing it, and getting even further?
It's amazing. And I saw a video, not of the record flight, but of a practice throw from the person who ultimately broke the record, or I think broke the record. Guinness goes through some steps to verify records after they're broken. Mm-hmm. And the plane's just amazing. So I can't hold any grudge at the fact that other people are doing awesome things. Congratulations to the team. I think it was a couple guys who worked together on that design. So that's awesome. It was truly awesome to see that. It's just I got to step up my game if I want to get to that. And then I'm not even close yet to the airtime. The record for that's almost 30 seconds. And my best is like 15. So, which, mind you, 15 is a world-class time. A lot of people, you mentioned Red Bull Paper Wings. 15 seconds is a time that could potentially win the international finals of Red Bull Paper Wings. So, I guess that's a good segue. Red Bull Paper Wings 2022 is ongoing. That's kind of the biggest international paper airplane competition. And Red Bull sponsors many things, and we paper airplane enthusiasts are lucky enough that they decided that paper airplanes were something that they wanted to be involved in. They put on a fantastic competition, and the production value of the events is great. They just recently held the national finals within the United States. There's basically this qualification process. And if you qualify for your country, you can go, Red Bull will pay your way and fly you to Austria to compete in this international finals of the competition. And so I participated in local qualifiers and was lucky enough to qualify through that for the national qualifiers in the United States. I went to the Eastern National Qualifier. They have 3, and you can kind of qualify from any of those 3 to go to Austria, and competed in distance there. And unfortunately, I didn't qualify through that. But there's a third category called aerobatics, which is basically just, can you make a paper airplane do cool tricks kind of thing? And you're allowed to throw mini planes. And the submission process for that was like a video submission. So I have a video, 3 entries actually, and waiting to hear whether I qualified as the United States representative for that category. So fingers crossed. I would absolutely love it. It's actually a bucket list item for me to go and compete in Austria.
Well, and to represent your country doing something you love. Like, how cool is that?
It would be so fun. And to be in a room with like 200 other paper airplane enthusiasts. I don't get that chance ever. So it would be very cool.
Well, you mentioned the distance team, the collaboration that takes place there. I have to imagine that, despite the fact that you have over 300,000 people that are subscribed to your channel and like love paper airplanes, obviously, there's probably a lot more that view your stuff that aren't even subscribed. But when it comes to it, like, collaboration is such a part of life. And, could you talk about that a little bit, about how you work with others that are, doing similar things, and how you guys, maybe sharpen each other in what you do?
Yeah, so there's both direct collaboration and indirect collaboration, and I've been lucky enough. That's been one of the real blessings of kind of publicly entering the sphere of kind of the paper airplane community. Is I've been able to meet other people who really share my interests and are doing cool things in the paper airplane world. So I've collaborated with John Collins, who prior to a week ago was the world record holder for paper airplane distance. And we actually created a product where I designed templates, these illustrated folding papers for paper airplanes that he had designed. I've teamed up with various other paper airplane YouTubers to create videos with them. And right now I'm working directly with two paper airplane designers who are just publishing their planes to my channel as well. And so it's been really, really cool to develop that community with kind of a handful of other designers, but also I get to experience a global community of enthusiasts, and I'm having regular conversations with people all over the world who just love paper airplanes like I do.
Nice. We do have a question from Chai D again, saying that their first grader would like to know if it's possible to design a paper plane to fly backwards.
That's interesting. So what does backwards mean, I guess, would be the question. But I would say the answer is yes. First, you can design a paper airplane that looks like it should fly. Say it's shaped like this. You would assume that this is the front of the plane and this is the back of the plane. But you can design planes that would fly forward in that direction, and while looking like they should fly in the other direction. But you can actually also design paper airplanes that will boomerang back to you, and they'll fly in a circle, and you can throw them and it'll come all the way back to you, and you catch it and you just throw it again. And so both of those problems require kind of different engineering solutions, but both are possible as well.
Nice. And I'm assuming you can go to a video on your channel to learn more.
Absolutely. I have several boomerang planes on my channel that you'd be able to find at youtube.com/foldable flight. Oh, there it is.
There we go. Thank you, Dylan, our producer. So there's another question that did come in from Margaret Highsmith. She asked, how do you attach a motor to a paper airplane without it falling? I'm assuming the motor falling is what she's referencing.
Okay. Well, some like Power Up, for instance, creates a motor that has a special clip on the front of it that attaches to your paper airplane, so it stays attached. You can also use tape or any other kind of attachment solution. But then you have the interesting challenge of, okay, doesn't this weigh too much for the paper airplane to carry? And there are some more kind of parameters on designing a paper airplane that works well with these motors, because their wings have to be big enough and stiff enough to carry that extra load. But actually, you'd be surprised that the power provided by these capacitors is enough that you can experience long durations of flight with powered paper airplanes. And it's a lot of fun. I have even had the pleasure of flying a remote controlled paper airplane, and there is nothing quite like that for the paper airplane enthusiasts. To make it on the spot, attach a motor to it, and then steer it and pilot it, that's a ton of fun.
That's awesome. I'll have to try that out. We had a question from, I think it was Falling with Style, and my producer shot that message over to me, but I haven't seen the question yet. So we'll see if he pulls that up. But while he's doing that, a question, let's see. I just realized the producer made a joke. It wasn't a comment. So Falling with Style is quite important. Thank you, Dylan. So, as we kind of come to a close here, what are the questions you wish I would have asked? What are the things that really excite you? What's on the horizon? We mentioned the kind of the mechanism side of things that, that you dream about someday doing, but, are there any other things that are out there that people need to check out, need to address, and how do they become more involved, I guess, in paper planes?
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing. The paper airplane community is very large, but not very well connected to each other, I would say. There isn't like a central forum hub where the paper airplane community all joins together and comments or anything like that. That's actually something that I'm hoping to see in the next few years, is that whether I'm the one who creates that and hopefully people receive it well, or someone else is really enthusiastic about creating that kind of meeting point for, even just virtually, for the paper airplane community. That's something that I would really personally look forward to. I think there are so many people doing very cool things in the paper airplane sphere, and you can find a lot of that on YouTube. Some people that you should definitely look up if you're an enthusiast is Tree K Dang on YouTube. John Collins, Michael LaFosse doesn't really post to YouTube, but he creates awesome paper airplane books. Jason Merrill, if you are an enthusiast of specifically military aircraft, Jason Merrill creates the most detailed origami aircraft that actually fly. So there's a ton going on. I'm at a point where I've kind of forgotten what the question was, but these are things that are happening in the paper airplane community that are truly awesome. And I think that honestly, the community right now is bigger and growing faster than ever before. That's my impression. I don't have any metrics on that, but it's been very cool to see so many people rallying together around something that is honestly very trivial, but is a lot of fun.
Nice. Well, that's really cool, man. Well, hey, looking forward to having you back on Friday. My fingers are crossed that we have good weather, because I want to take you out and actually fly some RC stuff as well. It won't be paper airplanes, but we'll definitely have some fun, get into the air trying that out with a buddy box or something. But Kyle, I can't thank you enough for your time. I know that our viewers enjoyed it. Once again, we'll be back on live stream tomorrow, where we're going to talk to Rick Croslin, who's an amazing individual. He and Kyle Thiede are going to have a great time talking about Mr. Bernoulli and some of the principles of flight there. So there's going to be a lot of activities, a lot of fun to be had. And then, of course, we've got to send people to your website as well, foldableflight.com. Amazing resources out there. As I said, there's over 800 videos out there for people to view, to enjoy, and to really experience model aviation through the form of free flight with paper, just paper planes. And whatever your flying style is you're looking for, whether you want it to go fast, whether you want it to be aerobatic, a boomerang plane, whether you want to try for that duration, there's no time like the present to try it out. And if you feel so inclined, try to design your own plane. It doesn't cost too much to get a few sheets of paper and start folding and seeing what's out there. So thank you so much for your time, Kyle.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Well, we look forward to joining you guys tomorrow. Until then, if you have questions, of course, reach out to education@modelaircraft.org. We look forward to having you as a part of our AMA Junior Camp this year. If you can't get enough, you can't wait to see more Junior Camp material. We have 2 years worth, and those are all on demand, just like this is going to be on demand in the future. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.